Hi,
Good
good morning.
morning, Sean. Welcome to the Art of Service live stream. I'm so excited to have you here.
Thank you, Vanka. It's lovely to see you again.
Yeah.
I'm really pleased to be here.
Yeah. And just to kick it off, some trivia for today. Um, my very first email conversation with you was on 13 November 2009, which is 4,500 days ago today.
Wow.
So we have known each other for 4,500 days. How's that?
Oh, well, happy 4,500th birthday to us. Cheers.
That's pretty cool, eh? So I
Mm.
thought, yeah, for some, you know, trivia to kick things off.
You make me feel a
Um,
little bit old, I must admit. But thank you
yeah,
for
yeah, no, I've got grey hair. You lost some hair.
I don't have any.
It's all good. It's all good. Hey, what I wanted to do before I introduce you formally, as per your bio, I noticed that you have your virtual background for International Women's Day, and it is International Women's Day week. So we will definitely talk about your role with as a Rare Birds ambassador, and your whole activity and your role in relation to women's equality and supporting women in the industry. So definitely make sure that we touch on that
Sure.
while we have this chat.
Always happy to talk about that, Ivanka, as you know.
Yeah,
Really
exactly.
important subject that I'm very passionate about.
Fantastic. So I got to know you, as I said, 4,500 days ago. And at that stage, you were the managing director of a digital agency called Deadline. And you did that for about 18 years in Adelaide, Queensland.
Right.
Queensland, South Australia. Adelaide, Australia, I was going to say. I'm in Queensland, you're in South Australia. So through working for over 2 decades as a business owner and leader in digital transition projects, you offer extensive experience in marketing, sales, business development, analysis, the management of significant website development, online software development and related marketing and sales, cybersecurity, social media, and graphic design project. That's your official bio. I know you as a very charismatic leader, as a very as a leader that doesn't just lead from the front but from the back, very hands-on, and is I've had the pleasure of working with you, so we don't just meet and have chats and conversations and glasses of red wine. I've had the pleasure of working with you when we were on the committee for what was then called the Anzac Summit, the regional conference that was at the Gold Coast.
Yeah, great
And
piece of work. Mm.
that was an amazing experience, and I really enjoyed watching you in action as a project manager, to really translate ideas and visions into actionable steps in such a way that people really want to rally behind you and really want to follow your vision and your path. So that was really inspirational to watch. So apart from your official bio and all that sort of stuff, I just wanted to mention that as well, because that's how I got to meet you. And like you said earlier, you are such an authentic and real person. There's no BS. There's no peacock behavior, which you see in business so much. And I really enjoy that.
Well,
So,
thank you, Ivanka. I mean, that is very, very kind words. Means a great deal to me that you remember that time we worked together on that really important piece of work, and yeah, I'm really grateful for very kind words. Thank you.
cool. You're welcome. So, how would you introduce yourself when you meet new people, when you're in a new situation inside of your work scenario or even personal? How do you introduce yourself?
Yeah, so if I'm at a dinner party or a barbecue or a party or a networking event, I suppose it depends a little on the context of the question, but usually I just explain that I'm a digital project manager. Um, and often that then leads to other questions. What do you mean by digital? What sort of projects? And then I usually ask a question back to try and understand really what it is the person wants to know about me, because I've reached the point in my life and career. In fact, I reached it about 8 years ago, where I didn't really feel like I had to deliver an elevator pitch every time I met someone new, which I know a lot of entrepreneurs feel like every time they meet someone new, they need to roll out their elevator pitch or the value proposition for their business or their product. So yeah, I try and keep it fairly high level to start with, and then really try and understand the other person and what it is that they really are interested in, not interested in about me, but where the question comes from, what it is that they really want to know, as opposed to giving my elevator pitch. So I've avoided your question there, but yeah,
that's okay. We'll circle back.
But no, briefly, yeah, a digital project manager. So I look after teams of people that are engaged in digital transformation projects, usually in medium-sized and large organizations. And those digital transformation projects are usually focused on delivering top-line growth, so sales growth, or improved services to customers. And those customers might be external to the business, so the business's customers that pay the money to buy things, or internal customers, customers inside the business that need services in order to deliver to the end customer.
Yeah. And then to follow up from my discussion I had with Steve Sisler last week, what is it that you value the most?
In what? Do you mean in my life, or in people, or in projects? Or could you be more specific, Ivanka? What do you mean by value?
I don't want to. Like, what is it that pops in your head first time when you hear that? Like, what do you value the most?
I value people. So we are all, and we all are in the people business in some form or another. Ironically, especially in technology, because information technology, and in fact all forms of technology, are really there to serve people and people's needs. So as a digital transformation professional, I'm so much less interested in the information technology that we are using to enable those transformations, and so much more interested in the people that we are doing those transformations for, the customer, if you like, and how the people that I'm working with, including myself, can serve that customer in a meaningful way. So I suppose, the short version is the people, but it's really this idea that the customer, no matter who they are and the people that they are should be at the center of everything that we do.
Yeah. Isn't it ironic though that even though you say it's digital transformation, it's really helping organization to go from either legacy products or going into cloud-based products, or to digitize documentation and document record systems. It is all about the people, and that has never changed. Like, I've been in the IT industry since the mid-90s, because like we said earlier, we're getting up there. And that piece has not changed, whether or not you're talking about a software development project that needs to be implemented, or whether you talk about an infrastructure project that needs to be implemented, or any change in an organization. It's always about the people. So how does that sit with you? Because you've gone through quite a bit of an evolution. Let's stick with the IT industry for now. So you've gone through quite an evolution to get to where you are now. Because when you started Deadline, the business, it wasn't a digital transformation business. It was a web design business. And so how did that evolve? And what did you create in that 18 years to bring you where you are now?
Yeah, thank you. Okay, well, I guess there's almost two questions there, maybe three. Perhaps the first question I hear is how did the business and the industry that we were working in evolve? And the other question I hear is how did I evolve as a professional within that continuum? So perhaps we could start with at a high level with maybe the industry, and then move to the business that I had, and then maybe go to myself. And as you know, because you know some of that story, a lot of that story, we could sit here for days to unpack it all. But I'll try and stay high level, because I know we only have an hour today and we're already 10 minutes in. So at a high level, digital transformation was born from what we know now as the commercial internet or the web. So 20 or so years ago, in fact, more than that, more like 25 years ago, the web as we know it now, that was simply a graphical user interface to the internet. And as the web developed, both in size and complexity and sophistication, our ability to utilize the internet through graphical user interfaces to communicate with each other, including to engage in commerce with each other, to do business, developed to begin with, quite a slow rate compared to the rate at which it's now developing. So if we cast our mind back 20 years, we didn't have smartphones on which we could use mobile applications, which we now just call apps. We only had desktop and a few laptop computers in which we could surf what was then called the World Wide Web, and use very early versions of the programming languages that are now used to ubiquitously across the web to interface with one another. So as that developed, more and more people became involved. And to begin with, very few people were involved. And the only people that were actually involved in the web and the internet were highly technical computer nerds that knew very little, if anything, about how to work with large groups of people. They didn't know anything about leadership. They really only knew about how to program computers and connect them together. So there was a very niche group of people, and academics, military, and educational institutions, and only the highly technical people in those organisations. So the sorts of personality types that were involved very early were perhaps not as alive to this idea that we're all in the people business as today. So
what made that change? Because I remember that in the early 2000s when we started our e-commerce business, and we created an app and we had no idea what to do with it. That was like 2002, 2003. So when did you feel that sort of hockey stick evolution started, where everything got digital and digital transformation was a thing for businesses to future-proof their business?
Yeah, great question. And we've only scratched the surface of that first part, and we just don't have time to go there. So I'm going to keep running with your question. But it was about when I knew that soon after we met. Actually, it was about when I decided that it was time for me to exit Deadline, my web development agency, because I could feel and see in the data the globalization effect that was occurring. And the way that I could feel and see it was in a very commercial way. So you remember that trip we did to India in 2012, and during that trip I met a colleague who in India that owned a web development agency. His business model was almost exactly the same as mine. And we sat down together over a couple of glasses of wine at the end of the conference, and we just talked over what it's like to run the same business. His was already a lot bigger than mine. He already had about 100 staff. And I asked him how it was that he could afford all those people. And it was quite simple. The demand that was coming for his services, coupled with the cost of labor in his market, allowed him to have a much bigger scale than I had. The globalization effect had already taken place effectively. And this is in 2012. And putting it very simply and very bluntly, in India, the cost of labor is lower than in Australia. And we're talking substantially, including skilled labor. And on top of that, and part of the reason for that is they have a lot more people. So they can scale up much faster because their scaling costs are lower. And so I saw that globalization effect, and that was very much the canary in the coal mine moment for me. It was like, okay, so here I am in Australia, Australian labor rates, and I make no political comment about it other than to say that it's a reality for Australian businesses. We pay more for labor, and we pay a lot more for skilled labor. I could see that at some point in the future, and probably much sooner than I would have liked, the competition for the services I was providing was going to drive down the price and therefore squeeze the margins that we were making and just make it harder to make money. So it was that moment for me that it was like, okay, time for me to get out.
Yeah.
Now, it might not have been the right time. I might have been a little bit too late, or it might have been a little bit too early. And there were other factors that drove the decision for me to exit my business and move into one of those other factors was a personal development issue. I knew that in order to develop as a people leader and as an entrepreneur, that I had to have experiences outside of just my own little business in little old Adelaide. So I'm not sure if that answers your original question. But I guess I'm trying to describe the continuum of macroeconomic and sort of globalization effect in the industry that also flowed all the way through to my personal decisions about my career.
Yeah. So in addition to that, so you say around 2012, so say 2010 to 2014, so roughly is when you really started noticing the difference from a globalization point of view.
Right.
Now that you work in corporate, looking back to that period, 2014, do you see that corporations have adapted that digital transformation work or piece of work as well around that time? Or because you mentioned it as the canary in the coal mine, had the canary have to sing for 6 more years before it really was embedded into business as usual, that digital transformation is a thing that we need to work on, that we need to be aware of?
Yes. Look, given what I've just described and the timeline I've just described, this might sound startling or controversial, but I still believe we are very much at the beginning of digital transformation as a discipline and as a journey for everyone, not just the corporate sector. Now, although I described something that occurred to me 10 years ago as a canary in the coal mine moment, that was in a very small niche within what we now know as digital transformation. So web design and web development back then is only a tiny little sliver of this, say, circle or sphere, continuum of what digital transformation and modern computing and related information and communications technology actually is. And yeah, I still feel very much that we're only at the beginning and only really starting to drive it. And certainly organizations like the one I work for now, Sage, are at the forefront of that curve and are deliberately moving their business models and dragging sometimes their customers on that journey. But yeah, digital transformation as a discipline and as an understandable practice for professionals and organizations to deliver for their customers and themselves is in its infancy.
Yep. So the other question that pops in my head, thinking about digital transformation and the fact that it is in its infancy, revolves around compliance. Because, everything that we do these days is all around helping create clarity around compliance, helping organizations to create clarity on the way forward. How, in your view, how has compliance and adherence to compliance changed as a result of digital transformation?
Well, look, great question. And look, I suppose I might start with one of those corollaries that we learned on our EO journey. And that is that, when you're lost in a forest, there's one thing that must happen before you can ever find your way out of that forest. And you might remember, Bunker, that thing that must absolutely happen first and nothing else can happen. There is no way out of the forest until we realize that we are lost. And accept that we are lost. And then go about the process of considering what next steps, what planning we must do to understand that we're lost. And I'm by no means saying that all organizations are lost in their compliance journey. But what
That's
I am
a great quote, like hashtag. Sean Heylen says, "We're all lost."
but I would respectfully point out that most modern organizations are only at the beginning of their compliance journey. And indeed, certainly for me as as an experienced entrepreneur, having been involved in not only my own business from startup through to maturity and exit, but also several others, I can assure you that most business owners, even experienced business owners who are great people and are genuinely trying their best, probably leave compliance close to the bottom of their list of priorities. Because it is an administrative and in some ways bureaucratic task that often isn't seen to deliver value to the business or its customers. Of course, that's not the case at all. Compliance, certainly in medium-sized and large organisations, is a critical component of delivering value to the customers because, as we know, Ivanka, it substantially reduces and manages risks. And if we're not reducing and managing risks in our business, or at least recognising those risks and considering them in our decision-making, then there's probably only one way for our businesses to go in the end, and that is for those risks to be realised. And you and I have both seen many examples of risks being realised and what it can do to businesses of all
and how
shapes and
quickly.
sizes. And how quickly, and seemingly from nowhere, and sometimes fatal.
Yeah. So, from your personal experience, what is your relationship with compliance? Going back to when you had deadline, how did you address compliance? How did your focus on compliance change when you made the decision to exit? So that's probably the first two questions.
Oh, look, I would, look, I'd say I've come full circle. So as a startup entrepreneur and fast growth business owner, all those years ago when we first met, I considered myself to be a professional risk taker. And indeed, I think the old French and Latin translation for the word entrepreneur is risk taker, or some form of a risk, someone that's willing to take risk on behalf of others and in order to grow capital. But now I would say that I'm a professional risk recognizer and manager. So that doesn't mean I don't take risks.
Is that because you're now involved in larger organizations, or is that because it's no longer your own organization?
Well, a bit of both. It's also because that's what great project management is. So great project management usually is actually managing a sum of cash, an amount of money, to create an outcome whilst navigating through risks. So in order to navigate through those risks, we must first recognize and understand what they are, and then consider mitigation strategies. What we will do if the risk is realized, how we will continue towards the delivery of the project, whatever that outcome might be, whatever that delivery looks like, on behalf of the project sponsor, the person with the money, which as small-time entrepreneurs, that's us, ourselves as business owners. But when working for other businesses, it's not us. It might be the shareholders of a publicly listed business, or it might be the C-suite of a privately owned company. So, or it might just be our boss, the guy whose budget it is that we're using in order to do this digital transformation project. So the management of risk and compliance to professional standards and various other compliance frameworks and authorities is really a way in which we can better understand our risks and use other people's experience to understand those risks. So I hope that goes some way to talking about compliance.
The flip side of that, the thing that I often hear is that that compliance stifles innovation, and digital transformation project for me breathe innovation, because you need to have some form of innovation to look into the future as to what kind of digital transformation we need, what's the vision as an organization. So how does compliance stifle the innovation in relation to digital transformation?
Yeah, it's certainly an easy cop out to say, oh, we're not going to do that because it means we can't innovate. We're not going to assess our cybersecurity footing because that will stop us from developing the most functional software. Well, my response to that, and using cybersecurity as an example, without cybersecurity compliance, you might be developing software that will destroy your organization and your customers. Cybersecurity vulnerabilities are extremely easy to exploit and very, very easy to recover from after they've been exploited. Very, very difficult to recover from after they've been exploited. Indeed, they can destroy business. My web development agency, Deadline, was almost destroyed by a cybersecurity vulnerability known as Sql Injection. Now, Sql Injection is a very simple, very easy thing to do for non-compliant SQL databases. And indeed, way back in 2010, I think it was, that vulnerability was inherent in the SQL database server product of one of the world's largest database vendors. I'm not going to name them because I don't want to risk any, but basically every organization across the planet that used one of the largest SQL database platforms available and still available today was vulnerable to a SQL injection, because that cybersecurity vulnerability had been built in, or shall we say missed, in the rollout of that platform. Now, that is an example of one of the largest software companies in the world, still one of the largest technology businesses in the world, making a mistake, a human error. And had they not made that human error, a whole bunch of pain for a whole bunch of businesses wouldn't have occurred, and a whole bunch of costs wouldn't have occurred. And in the end, they were forced to fix that error, roll out new versions of their software patches. And as we all know in technology, patches are being rolled out on a constant basis because those risks continue to exist. We continue to develop applications on top of applications, on top of platforms, on top of infrastructure that is not perfect in its compliance.
So what would you say to yourself now that you know what you know around compliance, around cybersecurity compliance? Like, step back into Sean as the entrepreneur, not Sean the risk manager, project manager, very risk aware person. What would you say to yourself and other entrepreneurs out there around the need for compliance and that it does not stifle innovation?
Yes. So two key questions. What are our options here? So as founding entrepreneurs and as software engineers and as solution finders, human beings believe they have the answer. And the most, shall we say, ego-driven people believe they have the only answer and that their answer is the best answer. But the reality is, very rarely does any individual human being have the right and only answer. There are usually, to any question, a bunch of answers and options that we should consider. In preparation for today's session, Ivanka, one of the questions you gave me is, what question would you ask more? And it is, what are our options? So I would have asked that question of myself and also of my team. What are our options here? So that we could then assess those options together in the context of compliance and risk, and say, okay, which one is the least risk, which is the most risk, and then from there, which one should we select? And the second question then is, what are the risks of this option? And then, of course, we can move to the next stage in risk assessment and talk about, okay, well, if we decide this option and the risk is realized, how will we then manage?
So basically what you're saying is just ask more questions and don't be satisfied with the very first answer that pops up in your head.
Absolutely. And that is the fundamental of auditing, right? That's what auditors do when they audit for compliance. They ask you a whole bunch of questions about what it is that you've done, why you've done it, how you've done it, what your rationale was, and in the end, what risks that is, to understand what risks have been taken or not taken, understood or not understood, so that we can decide whether for a data center, for example. So the first time I built a data center, I built it effectively with my own bare hands and knowledge. That data center happened to house IT infrastructure for a bunch of organizations who had very sensitive data, including a financial institution, including a number of government departments, one of which was related to defense, or two actually. They didn't know at the time about simple cybersecurity standards like PCI compliance, payment card industry compliance. They didn't know. They were a financial institution. And that was because the internet as we know it and information technology as we know it was in its infancy. And those standards either didn't exist or were not, or there wasn't enough education in the broader industry to understand that they existed and what processes one needed to go through in order to comply with the payment card industry standards for security of credit card information, for example.
Yeah. So while you're asking yourself all these questions, and you mentioned earlier that you are now a professional, risk mitigator as a project manager. So being an entrepreneur, going into large organizations as an employee, what major value did you bring from your personal experience of the highs and the lows of being in business, the highs and the lows of compliancy, being compliant, oops, maybe not, nearly lost the business, picked it up again. So what experience brought the most value to your employer the way you are now?
So that's a great question. I suppose to get the objective truth, you'd have to ask them because the various employers I've had, the various people I've worked for and with have had different reasons for wanting me as part of their organization. I believe that the greatest value I bring is my people leadership skills, and in particular, my empathy for people that I work with in the context of understanding that digital transformation is difficult and that the best people, the best technical people that work in information technology and digital transformation are also difficult. And not difficult because they're trying to be difficult. They're difficult because they have beautiful and unique personalities, skill sets and experiences that make them some of the most incredibly intelligent, hardworking and diligent people on the planet. But often they are so focused on their work and the solutions they're trying to create that they shut out everything around them, sometimes including the people around them. So I think we all know what I'm talking about, and I have to be careful with my language because I don't want anyone to be offended or feel like they're being pigeonholed. But my experience is that the best people, the best technical people, so the best programmers, the best infrastructure engineers, the best cloud engineers, the best cybersecurity professionals, they have a little bit of a quirk about them. And sometimes and often that quirk includes not being great at communicating, understanding, and being empathetic with people. So I think the best skill I bring is to the table is understanding that and being able to properly support that and put teams of people together that can deliver fantastic results whilst having those weaknesses played away from and their strengths played too. So my job is to handle all the people stuff. My job is to handle the liaison with the customer, the product owner, the sponsor. My job is to protect my technical team from all of that stuff and to put them in situations in which they can do their best work to deliver the highly technical needs that great digital transformation requires to be successful.
Yeah. And as you said, that's where you excel. That's what you're good at. So would you say that you would give yourself the Sean Heylen medal for best player across all teams?
Oh, not at all. No. So I do like being known as a great player. I certainly feel that like I am an A player, and I like to surround myself either with A players or people that want to be A players. But I wouldn't say I'm the best player in my team. In fact, I would say that generally the most successful teams I'm in, I'm definitely not the smartest person in the room. Indeed, if I feel like I'm the smartest person in the room, I run out to another room immediately. I'm definitely in the wrong room if I'm the smartest person in the room. But I'm not particularly skilled technically from an information technology point of view. I can use virtually any modern application with little or no training, but I can't build those applications from the ground up. In fact, I very rarely, if ever, review or write code, and I haven't for 15 years. It is not something I'm strong at. I do understand how databases work. I do understand the basics of scripting, markup, and other computer languages, but I do not engage in production work related to them. My job is all around managing the team to be, and the risks, so that we can deliver our projects. And if all I do during my work week is to meet with people, to listen to them, to ask them questions and support them to get their roadblocks out of the way, then I'm doing the best possible job I can. And that is by no means best player on the team or best in every area. I know what I'm not good at, and I try and stay away from that. I try not to play to my own weaknesses, shall we say.
And that's an important lesson as well that you've learned, and that's a lesson probably for other people to sort of listen to as well, is that even though you are like up to your ears in digital transformation, all you talk about all day, every day is how to support technology and how to support organizations moving into a more digital delivery of their services. To do that well within the compliance, within the realm of risk management and mitigation, you don't need to be technical. You need to understand the technical ecosystem, but you don't have to be a technical person. So every person on the team has a different role. Am I saying that correctly?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Look, I'm fortunate that I was able to have a technical role early on in my career, and that I was able to be surrounded by technical people that really did know what they were doing, and I absorbed a lot from a lot of technical understanding from them, to the point where I was able to build a data center, and I am able to understand database schemas and software design at a technical level. But that is not my area of strength, and not the area that I felt I could deliver the best value to the people around me, not just my clients, but in fact, more important to me than the customer is the people I'm working with directly. Is that ultimately without them, the customer has nothing. But I think it's a really important concept that is rarely understood and embraced. In some ways, it's counterintuitive to think that we shouldn't know everything about the field of work that we are within. But we could go down this path for quite a while as well, Ivanka, around strengths and weaknesses, being well-rounded, or being a genius in a particular area, and how important that is. But I'm firmly of the belief that we shouldn't necessarily try and work on our weaknesses or be good at everything. We should work on our strengths and put ourselves and others in a position to play to our strengths.
Yeah, I'm noticing a lot more articles around personality strengths and skill-based strengths, is where they have like that T diagram, where you know a little bit about a lot of things, but you really go deep into a skill base or a skill level or an understanding. And I'd say that's what you're basically describing, is you understand the ecosystem, you have an understanding of technology, but your skill is around transforming the way people view technology, how people work with technology, and managing that project forward. So you're a T person.
Absolutely. And I'll plug a book that describes the concept. It's called The 9 Lies About Work. I can't remember the name of the author, but I read it a couple of years ago. I was introduced to it by another IT leader. 9 Lies About Work. And there's one chapter, one of the lies is that people should be well-rounded. We have this idea that we should be constantly working on our weaknesses and be good at everything related to our work. Well, the corollary they use in that text, which is one I love because, as you know, I'm a sports fan, is around Lionel Messi. So Lionel Messi, one of the greatest soccer players in the history of the game, and therefore one of the greatest athletes in the history of the human race. He's left-footed, and he's not just a little bit left-footed. In fact, the statistics around his left-footedness is that he uses his left foot 9 times to using his right foot once. Now, surely that can't be right. That one of the greatest soccer players ever, he must be able to use both feet, and indeed he can use both feet, but he doesn't. His strength is his left-footedness, and everybody in the stadium when he plays knows that. The opposition coach, his coach, the opposition, they all know, but they can't stop him because he's so good with his left foot. And the coaches don't make him do right foot drills at practice.
No, just hone in on that strength, on what makes you unique and different from anybody else.
Exactly, that's right. So I'm a firm believer in that, and I suppose there are aspects of that we have to be moderate in our view as well. Of course, it's no good to be a brilliant asshole, for example. Which at times we all make that mistake, I think, because we're human. But so we must moderate our assholeness.
Yes.
But we also must play to our strengths. The things that we're brilliant at, we should continue to develop those. Be the best in the world at it if we can.
Yeah. So you mentioned sports, and I know you used to be very big into basketball before your niece decided.
Well, yeah, that's right, Ivanka. Thanks for raising basketball. We talk about basketball all day too, and I still am very much into basketball. I was very lucky actually to be able to convert my playing career.
I was very impressed that there is actually a Sean Heylen medal for best player across the teams in basketball. I was how many people have a medal named after them? That's pretty cool. I didn't know that about you.
Well, that's too much research, Ivanka. I don't know how you found that. And a great honour, certainly by the club I played for a very long period of time. It's still a bit surreal to stand up on the presentation day and put that medal around someone's neck. But I was very into basketball as a player. Was never quite good enough. I was too short and not quite fast enough, and not quite athletic enough, but I love the game, and I'm still very fortunate to be able to contribute as a volunteer leader on the board of the South Australian Amateur Basketball League. So I'm very grateful for that opportunity to give back to the sport that gave me so much.
Yeah. And your volunteer work doesn't just go to sports. I mean, you play golf, you cycle, you do your basketball, you're volunteering on the basketball. You've spent years and years and years and years volunteering for Entrepreneurs Organization. You're the ambassador of Rare Birds. That's a volunteer role. So talk to me about that, about your, how do you, I know how you make it happen, but what value does being a Rare Bird ambassador give you outside of the value your work brings you?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, and a classic question from an entrepreneur, Ivanka. What is in it for me? Look, I would honestly say that what is in it for me is the fulfillment of the purpose. I believe very strongly in diversity in all its forms, not just gender diversity, also cultural diversity, because of the strength and power that diversity brings to virtually any group of people, no matter what they are doing, whether they are at work or volunteering or at a dinner party. Diversity is our strength as a human race. And that is the sort of underlying purpose for me of volunteering for any organisation. And I suppose by way of background, you might remember, Ivanka, that my mother was actually the Commissioner for Equal Opportunity and Human Rights here in South Australia when I was a young boy. So we would talk about these issues around the dinner table, and she was having up close and personal experiences with things like discrimination in the workplace, sexual harassment, and marginalisation of minority groups. So I was very aware of those social issues. But then as I started to grow up and started to practice in the workplace and in other places, I started to notice the power of diversity, just how much more productive, positive, and interesting life was when I wasn't sitting around with a bunch of white men the same age as myself. Remembering, Ivanka, as you would also know, that I went to an elite private school. single sex.
Mm.
So it would have been very easy for me to continue to hang around with white men. And in fact, sometimes I do. But
Well, there's still golf.
well, that's right. And so there's a bit of a dichotomy or irony there. But I can honestly tell you that the middle-aged white men that I hang around with, some of whom are members of a golf club and very conservative, they feel the same way I do now about, in particular, gender diversity, but also cultural diversity. We are your allies, Ivanka, and there are still structural, organizational, and subconscious bias that we have to break, and we have to work on, and we have to talk about. There are times when I maybe don't say the right thing, but it's not deliberate, I can assure you. And what we are deliberately trying to do, and I speak for the men that I spend time with whom I talk about these issues with, we do want to understand and continue to discuss what it is we can do to break the bias and continue to support women and really anyone from a diverse background, whatever that diversity looks like, to succeed. And indeed, that is the thing I enjoy most about people leadership in digital is watching and supporting people come from a diverse background of some form, even if that is simply that they don't know anything about digital transformation and they're learning about it to succeed. The thing I love most about my job is being able to hire people, put them in positions to succeed and support them to learn and grow into better people and to improve their lives.
Yeah. I really love how passionate you are about this and how you inject that in every part of your life. You inject it in how you raise your girls, you inject it in your volunteer work, you inject it in your role at work. And I really admire that. And I love you for it, because I think it's really good to have men like yourself, be upfront and fight the battle with everybody else. So
thank you again for those kind words. It means a lot, Ivanka. As you know, I don't always get positive feedback. And sometimes the sort of allyship I'm talking about, the sort of support that I like to practice, it can be misinterpreted in a range of different ways. But I assure you that those that know me best and that know who I really am, like you do, Ivanka, know that even though I and many men, most men, all men are not perfect, most of us genuinely do want the best for the people around us, no matter what their gender.
Yeah. And I also like the fact that the role you've got with your digital transformation really helps you with that passion as well, that you bring that passion in your digital transformation, so that it's not just a technological piece, but it's a people piece, and it's helping people in organizations to help the organizations transfer.
I'm extremely lucky, Ivanka. I've found a career path and now a job and a brand that absolutely fully understands what we're talking about and supports it. I'm in the process of putting a team together for a brilliant project that is going to be so exciting to engage in and roll out over the next couple of years, the Future Systems program at Sage. And I've just hired 3 women for the team. So my core team of 5 has 3 women in it.
Yeah.
I'm thrilled by that. Most of all, in a very selfish way, I'm thrilled by the fact that these women are the best in the industry that I could find for this role, for their roles. So we're talking about merit, not because they're women, but the fact that they're also women, and they all also happen to be relatively recent immigrants to Australia, gives us not just cultural, not just gender diversity, but cultural diversity. So for me, it's like I'm going to be in heaven.
Win-win-win. Yeah.
So we've got these fantastic professional women who are all amazing at their functional areas in my team, and they all have diverse cultural backgrounds.
Yeah.
Imagine what the conversations on the planning retreat are going to be like. It's going to be just fantastic to learn about them and their journeys and support them as they go forward. And I'm really looking forward to that. that part of it.
Fantastic. So if people want to know more about you, your role, share your experiences, ask you questions,
Mm.
I have your LinkedIn here. So that's your LinkedIn profile. I think that might be the best way for people to get in touch with you.
Yes.
Shoot a message, and then can talk about anything and everything that you wish to talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. Great chat. I'm always interested in meeting new people, as you know, Ivanka. Yeah, LinkedIn profile is publicly available. Facebook profile as well. I'm probably a little more personal, a little more professional, a little more personal on Facebook, a little more professional on LinkedIn. But
As we all do.
but one-on-one, I'm the same person, and I'll try to always be the real me, authentic, honest, and open in my conversations with good people.
Excellent. Well, let's just close it down with that. We'll just zoom you out with a little bit of background music.
Thanks so much, Ivanka. Thanks, everyone. What a great chat.
So much for your time. It was a great chat. I'll talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.